Where are you going?
I think I'll sit down.
Okay. I noticed that there's a insignia of a deacon's stole here, so I figure that's where you should sit. And I'm worried about this. The sword of St. Paul, and I'm supposed to sit here? I don't know. What I thought we'd do is take a look at what we know in the gospel story today and take a look at what we don't know about the gospel story today, put them together and shake them up and see what comes up. We do know that the Romans would hire local people to collect taxes wherever they had their garrisons. We do know that tax collectors were responsible for remitting to Rome that which was owed. Now, if the tax collector were able to take more than what was actually required, what happened to the overage? Tax collector got it. So why was Zacchaeus, the tax collector, a wealthy man? You figure it out. We also know that everybody who was occupied by the Romans didn't like it. Now, some people said, well, easy come, easy go. Other people, armed a resistance effort, and some people were in the middle. But it's also pretty clear that everybody hated the collaborators. Everybody hated their neighbors who were in league with the Roman occupiers and who were getting rich off of their hard work. Does that make sense? Zacchaeus was one of these guys. We don't know what his life was like before becoming a tax collector. Maybe he was already wealthy before that. We don't know. Maybe he had a very healthy relationship with his community before that. Maybe he was a leading man in the synagogue before that. We don't know. I personally don't think so. I mean, why would a guy give up all of that to assume this loathsome position? That doesn't really make sense. It's possible, but we don't know. What we do know is that Zacchaeus became a hated person and untouchable. And it makes sense that Zacchaeus thought this was okay, that the money made it worthwhile. Because if it didn't, Zacchaeus would have quit. If this standing in the community had been so important to Zacchaeus, he would have just said, thanks, but no thanks. You get somebody else to do your dirty work. I can't do it anymore. So this makes sense about who Zacchaeus was and how people thought about him. When Jesus comes into Jericho, he sees Zacchaeus, and all I can say is that the gospel is pretty clear about giving to Jesus a certain ability, a certain talent for reading people. Everybody clear about that? Jesus has a special talent for understanding people. He sees Zacchaeus, and he recognizes something in Zacchaeus, an eagerness, an openness, a desire. Now, we might be cynical and say, well, Jesus was hungry and he wanted a good meal, so he chose Zacchaeus because Zacchaeus was going to be an excellent host. That's cynical. I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's possible. I don't think that's the way Jesus is portrayed. I think Jesus is portrayed as someone who connects with folks and tries to bring them to the next level, whatever that is. You know, if Jesus meets a prostitute, he tries to bring that person up to whatever the next level is for that person. Jesus meets a cripple, he tries to bring that person to whatever the next level is for that person. Jesus meets people where they are and then leads them from there to the next step. So he sees Zacchaeus and he recognizes something in Zacchaeus, and he wants to bring Zacchaeus because he feels like this guy is willing to make the next step. That makes sense? So far, so good. Okay. Zacchaeus recognizes that this is probably the first moment of acceptance, the first moment of connection that he's been offered probably since he started collecting taxes. And he's hungry for this. I don't know if you've ever been a pariah. I don't think I've ever been a pariah. But I imagine that if I were, that would hurt. That would be lonely and sad. And Zacchaeus is a pariah. And so of all the people who would like to say, I had Jesus over to my house for dinner, yeah, he chooses the worst guy in town. The guy least likely to be invited to your place. Zacchaeus seems to be overcome with this invitation to meet Jesus and to change his life. So he declares, if I have gotten any wealth dishonestly, if I have twisted somebody's arm to pay more taxes than they owed, I'll return it. I want to start over with a clean slate. It doesn't indicate that Zacchaeus quit collecting taxes. I think there's a way to do that honestly. I hope so. I'd hate to think the IRS is a bunch of crooks, although I have heard stories. There is a way to be honest in whatever you're doing. There's also a way to be crooked in whatever you're doing. You want to be a faithful marriage partner? Yeah, there's a way to do that. You want to be an unfaithful marriage partner? There's a way to do that too. Policeman, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, you name it. There's a right way to do things, and then there's the other way to do things. Zacchaeus felt like he was somehow empowered to start doing things the right way, to change his life. And Jesus says, this is what it means to be a son of Abraham. Not the fact that you've been circumcised, or not the fact that you go to synagogue or temple, not the fact that you wear phylactery around your head, or that you can quote the Psalms from memory. Those are all nice, but this is what it means to be in covenant relationship with God. You live your life in the right way. Does that make sense? Okay, anybody want to disagree? One last word as I wrap things up. October has been designated by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops as Respect Life Month, and so I'll just leave you with the punchline. And the punchline is simply that God is the author of all things, everything. I notice your windows up here. I'm a big fan of the Hubble telescope and photographs. I didn't know that these were actual photographs. I thought these were just somebody admiring the Hubble photographs and, drawing a likeness. But apparently these are the real deal? Yeah. God made all that. And everything else. So God is the author of things that are alive and living, and things that are not exactly living, but certainly changing and evolving. God is the author of all things. And so God is the sovereign of all things. God is the author of life, and He alone has the authority over all life. And so we respect that. And especially when it comes to human life, which we believe begins at conception, not at the age when the children leave the home. Although life begins for the parents when the children leave the home. Yeah, life begins at conception and it ends when it ends. Now doctors may disagree. It might have to do with brain signals or heartbeat, or there have been people who've survived 10 minutes, 20 minutes after they were declared dead, and guess what? They weren't dead. So when does life end? That is a good question. I like to say when you see the rigor mortis, that's a pretty good sign. Until then, benefit of the doubt, I say. Please, when it's my turn, wait for the rigor mortis, okay? Don't bury me before that. That's it, Easy, right? Simple. Got all the problems? No. That's just the start. That's the starting point for a number of complex right-to-life issues. But at least having a starting point in our consideration of this constellation of complex issues, having a good place to start is important. So I just leave you with that. No matter what issue tends to burn in your mind, start with that assessment that God is the author of all life. God is sovereign. And how do we respect that? Start from there, and I think you're on the right track.